Welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking into the heart-wrenching story of Jessica Callagher, a 27-year-old woman from Austin, Texas, whose life was taken just as she was building the future she had always dreamed of. In today's video, we're talking about the story of Jessica Callagher, a 27-year-old woman whose life was taken far too soon. Jessica was living in Austin, Texas, and by all accounts, she was working hard to build the life she wanted. She had graduated from Texas State University and was juggling two jobs while working toward her master's degree. During the day, she worked at a local grocery store. On other days, she filled in as a substitute teacher, hoping it would eventually lead to a full-time position at an elementary school. She was saving money wherever she could, for school, for student loans, for her future. It wasn't easy. She was constantly busy and under pressure, but she stayed hopeful. Friends say she truly believed things would get better with time. One close friend later shared something Jessica had written. "Someday everything will make sense. Keep telling yourself everything happens for a reason. Laugh at the chaos and smile through the tears." That really captured who she was. Even after long, exhausting days, Jessica was upbeat, motivated, and genuinely enjoyable to be around. She had plans, goals, and a future she was excited about. On September 7th, 2009, Labor Day, Jessica spent the day with her cousin and best friend, Melanie, along with a few others. It was extremely hot, so they stayed in, grilled food, and spent time swimming in the pool. After a few hours, they went out to a nearby diner to eat. Jessica had worked the next morning and had already decided she would be the one driving everyone home. She also wanted to save money, so she only had a couple of drinks. Later that night, the group stopped by a bar to play pool for a bit. They left shortly after midnight, and Jessica began dropping everyone off. Around 1:30 a.m., Melanie was the last person in the car. She offered to let Jessica stay over, but Jessica said no. She wanted to get home, rest up, and be ready for her shift in the morning. She also mentioned needing to stop at Walmart to pick up dog food and check on her pets. They hugged, said goodbye, and Jessica drove off toward the nearby Walmart. A few hours later, as people were starting their day, Melanie's phone rang. It was someone from Jessica's workplace. Jessica hadn't shown up for her shift. That alone was alarming. Jessica was dependable, she didn't miss work, and she didn't just disappear without letting someone know. Melanie immediately felt something was wrong. She started calling and texting, but no one had heard from Jessica. That feeling only got worse when Melanie spoke to Jessica's brother, John, who shared an apartment with her. He was just as shocked. Jessica wasn't home, and she hadn't said anything about changing her plans. At that point, it was clear this wasn't normal. Something had happened. John was already at work that morning. He'd started his shift as a police officer at 5:30 a.m. and hadn't seen or heard from Jessica before he left. At the time, he didn't think much of it. He assumed she was still asleep and that they'd simply missed each other. But when he came home later, something immediately felt off. One of Jessica's dogs ran up to him, clearly anxious and unsettled. It was obvious she hadn't been home since the day before. John grew worried and reached out to his colleagues, telling them Jessica was missing. He asked if they could try to locate her phone. The signal came back near the intersection of U.S. Highway 183 and Walton Way in Cedar Park. The location itself was confusing. It wasn't remote or hidden. There were several businesses nearby, and at that time of day, traffic was heavy. People were everywhere. Yet there was no sign of Jessica. Melanie and her boyfriend Sergey rushed to the area as soon as they heard. When they arrived, they spotted Jessica's white Kia almost immediately. It was parked neatly in a row outside a Little Caesars, like someone had taken the time to line it up properly. As soon as they got out of their car, though, they noticed a strong, awful smell. It was extremely hot that day, around 90 degrees, and all the windows of Jessica's car were rolled up. Inside, Jessica was slumped in the driver's seat, which had been pushed unusually far back. She wasn't moving. The inside of the car appeared to be covered in what looked like feces. When they opened the door, the smell became overwhelming. Melanie leaned in and gently touched Jessica's head, hoping desperately that she would wake up. She didn't. Jessica's skin was badly sunburned from the heat. Red patches covered her body and her hair was soaked with sweat. Sergei immediately called the police. At that point, it was clear that Jessica Callagher had been killed. Investigators found clear signs of strangulation. Something had been tightly wrapped around her neck. There were small cuts on her eyes, face, and neck, along with bruises and scratches across her body. Jessica had been sexually assaulted and strangled twice. Once with a piece of cloth, possibly the tie from the white dress she had worn over her swimsuit, and again with someone's hands. Deep scratch marks on her neck showed that she had fought back, digging her fingernails into her own skin in a desperate attempt to breathe. Her wallet, credit cards, and car keys were gone. Her phone, however, had been left behind, which suggested someone may have gone through it and decided not to take it. Police immediately began canvassing the area, focusing on nearby businesses and restaurants. Given how public and busy the location was, they believed someone had seen something, even if they didn't realize it at the time. One employee who arrived early that morning told police she saw Jessica while she was still alive. What she described was unsettling. She first noticed Jessica naked and crawling inside her car, as if she were trying to get dressed. It looked like she was struggling to pull on her bathing suit. Not long after that, the employee saw her again. This time, Jessica was fully dressed in a white outfit. She was sitting outside the car, casually playing with her hair. A little later, the employee noticed her once more back inside the car, talking to herself and moving her hands in a way that didn't make much sense. Other people who saw Jessica that morning said similar things. She looked exhausted and confused. No one actually spoke to her, but the way she was acting stood out. It didn't seem normal, and it didn't seem predictable. After that, no one saw her alive again. Melanie later told investigators that Jessica hadn't been exercising heavily and wasn't using drugs. When the toxicology results came back, they backed that up. There were no drugs, no alcohol, and no medications in her system at all. That only deepened the mystery. There was no obvious explanation for why she had been behaving that way. Inside the back of Jessica's car, police found a large bag of dog food. Melanie confirmed that Jessica had planned to buy it that night, which meant she had likely purchased it earlier that morning. Directly across the street from where the car was found was a Walmart that stayed open 24 hours a day. Surveillance footage showed Jessica arriving there around 2:30 a.m. She went inside alone, wearing a red baseball cap and a white dress, her bag slung over her shoulder. Inside the store, she looked completely normal. She wasn't stumbling, she wasn't acting confused, and she didn't appear upset. No one approached her, and no one seemed especially interested in her. She walked straight to the pet section, picked up a bag of dog food, and went to check out. As she left the store, an employee standing near the exit watched her walk out. Up to that point, there was no sign that anyone was paying attention to her or following her. But that's when things began to change. A tall man wearing a brown shirt and a baseball cap appeared behind her. He had entered Walmart just a few minutes before Jessica did and had parked his small truck far away from her car. He went into the restroom, and when he came back out, Jessica walked directly past him carrying the heavy bag of dog food on her shoulder. As Jessica walked back toward her Kia, the man who had been behind her began to move faster. The gap between them closed to about 20 seconds. Her car was parked behind a large tree, completely out of view of Walmart's exterior cameras. The only other camera that covered that area was low quality, making it hard to see much detail. Still, one thing stood out clearly. The man's truck never moved. It stayed parked where it was, which meant he had walked straight toward Jessica's car. After that, he never appeared on camera again. About 2 minutes after Jessica reached her car, with the man following behind, her vehicle pulled out of the parking spot and headed toward the exit. What came next on the footage was disturbing. Later surveillance showed Jessica's car parked outside a Little Caesars. cameras captured someone getting out of the car, crossing the street and walking back toward the Walmart parking lot. It was the same man, identifiable by his clothing. He got into his truck and drove away at around 5:30 a.m., just 20 minutes after Jessica's car had been left outside the restaurant. That same man was later caught on camera using Jessica's bank card at an Exxon gas station. What made this even more alarming was that Jessica herself was never seen leaving her car at any point. From the time she arrived at the Walmart parking lot, she was only seen inside the vehicle until her body was discovered at 2:50 a.m. Her car stayed in that same spot the entire time. Because several employees had seen Jessica earlier that morning, investigators knew she had still been alive for a while after arriving there. That only made the timeline harder to understand. Piece by piece, it just didn't add up. With few leads to go on, police released the surveillance footage and asked the public to watch for a red pickup truck. For a while, all they could do was wait and hope someone recognized it. During that time, Jessica's funeral took place. Her family later shared that they didn't know she had been strangled until they saw the marks on her neck. Discovering that in the middle of saying goodbye made an already devastating day even harder. Everyone was left asking the same questions. Who did this and why? Then, unexpectedly, a woman named Leslie came forward. She believed she recognized the truck and thought it belonged to a 37-year-old man named Crispin Harrell, a close friend of her fiancé. Leslie told police that Crispin had been supposed to come by their apartment with some money just hours before Jessica was found. He never showed up. At the time, that stood out to her. Something about his absence didn't sit right. The uneasy feeling Leslie had didn't go away. The more she thought about it, the harder it became to ignore. Eventually, she decided she had to speak up, even though it wasn't easy. She later admitted it was one of the hardest choices she'd ever made. Crispin had always felt like family to her, but a young woman had lost her life, and staying quiet didn't feel right. When police looked into Crispin, something immediately stood out. Just 3 weeks earlier, he had been pulled over for driving with an expired license. That stop had been recorded on a body camera. When investigators reviewed the footage, it confirmed what they were already thinking. Crispin was driving the same red truck, and he was wearing the same baseball cap seen in the Walmart surveillance video. At that point, investigators felt confident they had their suspect. 5 days after Jessica's body was found, police went to Crispin's home to question him. By then, the truck looked noticeably different. Parts of it that had previously been shiny had been painted black, an apparent attempt to change how it looked. Crispin didn't seem surprised by the visit. He told police that he knew Jessica and claimed they had connected online through a website called lonelyhousewifehookups.com. According to him, they had planned to meet at the Walmart sometime between 12:30 and 1 a.m. on the night she died. Crispin said they had been chatting on Messenger and claims that after meeting up, the two of them left together in Jessica's car and had sex near a park. He admitted he had been inside her vehicle and might have been one of the last people to see her alive, but he insisted that didn't mean he had killed her. He also pointed out that police hadn't directly accused him of anything. But investigators already knew his story didn't match the evidence. Surveillance footage showed that when Jessica arrived at Walmart, she wasn't there to meet anyone. She appeared focused and purposeful, heading straight inside to buy dog food. There was no sign of recognition between her and Crispin, no conversation, no eye contact, not even a glance. Everything about the video suggested they didn't know each other at all. The idea that they had met there voluntarily quickly fell apart. Crispin then changed his story. He now claims that after their supposed encounter, Jessica drove him back to Walmart and the two of them talked briefly. During that conversation, he said he told her he was struggling to pay for gas. According to Crispin, Jessica felt sorry for him and handed over her bank card, writing the PIN number on his hand. He told police that when he learned Jessica had died the next day, he was shocked. He claimed he kept thinking, I was just with this girl and now she's dead. That's not how things were supposed to happen. But by then, his story had already shifted too many times, and investigators weren't buying it. Crispin eventually admitted that he had changed the appearance of his truck and thrown away Jessica's bank card. He said he did it because he was scared it would make him look guilty. To investigators, though, his explanations felt off. They were long, extremely detailed, and almost sounded rehearsed, which only raised more suspicion. Melanie and Jessica's close friends backed that up in another important way. Jessica had never mentioned meeting anyone that night. She was open with the people closest to her. If she had plans to meet someone, especially late at night, and especially someone she didn't know well, she would have told someone where she was going and who she was meeting. Police then took a closer look at both Jessica's and Crispin's phones and computers. There was nothing linking them. No messages, no calls, no emails, not a single record of communication between the two. Even more telling, Jessica had never visited the website Crispin claims they used to connect. What investigators did find was far more disturbing. Just hours after Jessica's body was discovered, Crispin had been searching her name online, looking at her photos and reading about her. Based on the evidence, police believed Crispin had followed Jessica out of Walmart, forced his way into her car, and made her drive to a nearby park. There, they believe he raped her and strangled her twice. Afterward, investigators think he drove her car back to the parking lot, left her unconscious and badly injured inside, took her bank card, and walked away. But when detectives began pressing him about what the surveillance footage actually showed, Crispin stopped talking. He asked for a lawyer. At that point, investigators were convinced he was responsible for Jessica's death. Still, one critical question remained unanswered. What happened after he parked her car and walked away? No one else approached the vehicle. Crispin never returned, and even though Jessica hadn't harmed herself, she was somehow still alive after he left. What happened next appeared chaotic and desperate, but no one witnessed it. At the time, police didn't have enough evidence to charge Crispin with murder. What they did have was proof that he had lied repeatedly. He was charged with perjury, and in May of 2010, after pleading guilty, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The murder investigation, however, never stopped. Detectives continued reviewing the case, looking for anything they might have missed. Eventually, they came across a critical piece of information. A study from the Indiana University School of Medicine described cases where victims survived strangulation only to die hours later due to delayed complications. For investigators, that discovery changed everything. This information finally helped explain what happened to Jessica. Deaths like this don't happen right away. In some cases, it can take hours. It's known as delayed death from strangulation, where the initial attack causes serious internal damage that continues to worsen over time. Experts believe this explains both Jessica's behavior outside her car and what was found inside it. Being strangled twice caused significant trauma to her brain. She was confused, disoriented, and unable to understand what was happening around her. She couldn't call for help, couldn't use her phone, and couldn't even think clearly enough to move to shade. Lying in her car for hours in extreme heat only made things worse, eventually pushing her into heat stroke and making recovery impossible. Forensic medicine specialist Dr. Bill Smock explained how quickly this kind of damage can happen. When the brain is deprived of oxygen-rich blood, the first thing that usually happens is loss of consciousness. A seizure can follow. Within about 15 seconds, brain cells begin to die. The body then loses control of basic functions, first the bladder, then the lower muscles. The brainstem, which controls breathing and heartbeat, is the last part to shut down. Meanwhile, the upper parts of the brain, the areas responsible for memory, judgment, and personality, are much more sensitive to oxygen loss and are affected first. With that understanding, investigators believed Crispin strangled Jessica twice and assumed she was dead. In reality, she had only lost consciousness. In May of 2013, Kristen was officially charged with capital murder. Prosecutors argued there was clear intent to kill, supported by a strong body of evidence. Kristen pleaded not guilty. His defense focused on the lack of DNA evidence tying him directly to Jessica, arguing that this weakened the case. But investigators weren't surprised by that. The extreme heat and humidity on the day she died would have quickly broken down biological evidence, making usable DNA difficult, if not impossible, to recover. Even so, prosecutors remained confident. The surveillance footage, the timeline, and Kristen's own movements painted a clear picture. What happened had been captured step by step, and investigators believed there was no realistic possibility that anyone else was responsible. During the trial, the prosecution called one of Kristen's ex-girlfriends, Elizabeth, to testify. She told the court that Kristen had lied to her, claiming his apartment had burned down and that his phone had been destroyed in the fire. It was yet another example, prosecutors argued, of his willingness to lie when it suited him. In reality, police had taken Crispin's phone as part of the investigation. He also told Elizabeth that his truck had broken down when, in fact, it had been seized by authorities. Despite the amount of evidence against him, the first trial ended in a mistrial. Prosecutors were accused of withholding key information and the case stalled. For Jessica's family and friends, it felt devastating, like everything had been reset after years of waiting. The lead prosecutor, District Attorney Janet Doody, later faced serious consequences. She was jailed for violating a gag order and disciplined by the State Bar of Texas for professional misconduct. Years later, she was found dead from a gunshot wound to the head. Crispin's second trial began in the spring of 2018, nearly 10 years after Jessica's death. This time, the jury reached a clear decision. Crispin Harrell was found guilty of capital murder. Because the state did not seek the death penalty, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. In 2020, Crispin tried to appeal the conviction, but the court upheld the verdict. He remains in prison, serving that same sentence. The contrast is hard to ignore. Jessica had spent a happy night with people she loved. By morning, she was just trying to get home, feed her dogs, and make it to work. Her master's degree was close, something she had worked tirelessly for, and her future was full of plans. Her cousin John later said that while seeing Crispin caught and convicted brought a sense of justice, it didn't bring peace. It doesn't change anything, and he said Jessica doesn't get to live, but he does. John also shared something Jessica's father said that day. "I lost so much. He took away my chance to walk her down the aisle. I know she would have been an amazing mother. I miss her deeply." Melanie added that grief changes as time goes on, but what she witnessed in that parking lot has never left her. Holding on to the good memories is hard. It never feels like a full day anymore, she said. There's always something missing. If you found this case fascinating, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. We post crime case videos every night. Until next time, stay safe, stay vigilant.